In 2009, in Utah, John Edward Jones and three buddies went caving. They traveled to a cave called Nutty Putty Cave, called this for the clay-like texture that lathered almost every surface. John and his friends were kind of amateur cavers, but they were pretty decent at it. They liked it, and they were particularly looking for a passage in the cave called the Birth Canal. The birth canal was called this because as you squeeze through this tight passage going down, there is a part where it gets very tight, and then you come into an open spot where you can turn around. Hence why it's called the birth canal. Like, at the very end of it, there's a tight squeeze where you come out, and then you pop out into an open area. This was a very tight passage, make no doubt about that, but it was doable. While exploring the cave and a little bit away from his friends, who are all off doing their own bits of exploring, John thought he found the entrance to the birth canal and dove in. Head first! This was a horribly tight passage, thought John, and he was like, well, the birth canal is a tight passage, and he knew that, again, supposedly, you squeezed through an end of it and there was a turnaround, so you just had to get through the worst of it before you got to the better part of it. So, he kept squeezing, and squeezing, and squeezing down further and further into the cave. Unfortunately, it was far too late when John realized he had made a grave mistake. The passage that John had entered was not the birth canal, but was indeed some different part of the cave that actually sectioned off to a dead end that was labeled Ed's Push, I do believe. And like I said, this was a dead end. And John had just squeezed his body through this giant, very tight, this passage that was very tight. He went in head first and now found a dead end. John was stuck upside down, and his friends could not pull him out, and eventually recovery efforts were made, and for 27 hours John was trying to be recovered from this cave, where he then suffered a cardiac arrest from being obviously upside down. The human body is not meant to be upside down for that amount of time, and he succumbed to cardiac arrest, too much pressure on his heart. John Jones passed away at 11:56 p.m. on November the 25th. And the cave of Nutty Putty is still to this day the entrance of it has been blown up so no one can go down there, because down there is supposedly the body of John Edward Jones, as they were unable to retrieve his body from the cave. Welcome back to Draconic, where the opening has literally nothing to do with the topic at hand, except for the fact that, I don't know, it could have saved John's life. Claustrophobia. Claustrophobia is classified as an anxiety disorder, one of many anxiety disorders. This irrational fear is specific to places that are restrictive or crowded, but don't actually pose any threat to an individual. Now, I do want to preface that claustrophobia is a phobia. I preface this because when talking about this subject matter, there's a lot of people who claim to have claustrophobia, and there is a whole conversation around people who kind of somewhat steal phobias or disorders from people and claim that they have it when they don't actually have it. Yo, this is Draven, your boy from the Editor's Bay. I just wanted to let you know, I'm gonna rant here in a second about diagnosis and stuff like that, and I just want y'all to know I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud saying like, oh, you can't say oh, I have claustrophobia, or oh, I have, in a sarcastic manner. Like, I'm not trying to say that like you have to be absolutely so sensitive about it that, because I understand watching it back again, I'm in the Editor's Bay. It kind of seems like I'm being a negative Nelly about people, just expressing like, oh, that creeps me out, like, oh, that makes me feel claustrophobic. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you have to be so freaking vicious about it that you're like, oh, you can't say that. I'm just saying Like, some people claim to have claustrophobia, some people claim to have ADHD, and some people claim to have OCD. And it's just it's just a tiny bit disrespectful to say it if you don't have a diagnosis. That's all I'm saying. If you look at something like, for example, and I talked about this in my script too, I rehearsed my scripts just a little bit, and for some reason I forgot about this because I was getting so heated that I forgot to bring this up, but I have a bit of like OCD tendencies, right? And I call it OCB. I call it obsessive compulsive behavior. I made a different word for it because I understand that I don't actually have a diagnosis of OCD. Like, for example, when I go to the bathroom, if the toilet seat lid's up, which the toilet seat lid is always up, I have to close it before I open it back up again. I can't just sit down. Even if it's like, I can't do it. I literally, and I would almost consider that an OCB thing, because it's like an obsessive compulsive thing. I can't not sit down on a toilet where the seat lid is already up. If the seat lid's up, I gotta close it and then open it back up again. And that's just one of the many things that I do personally that could be considered an OCD thing, but I have no diagnosis of it, so I'm not going to claim to have it, Just don't claim to have it, That's all I'm saying, because a lot of people claim they have, oh, my ADHD is just killing me today. It's like, maybe you're just not focusing. I'm going to talk about it, don't worry. I'm just saying this kind of as a caveat that I'm going to get into it a little bit, and it's going to get me a little heated up, which is why I forgot to mention this part, that I don't mean to be a stick in the mud. I really don't. Like, you can say, like I say all the time, like, ADD things, where I'm just like, my ADD, kind of in a sarcastic way. I don't really mean it. I just mean that, you can say those kinds of things and sarcastically and everything. I'm not that kind of person to be like, you don't have it, you don't have a diagnosis, so you can't say that, you can't say that. I'm not one of those people. I'm just saying that for people who do have disorders like claustrophobia, like an anxiety disorder like that, it's just disrespectful to be like, oh, I'm so claustrophobic, I have claustrophobia. And it's like, you don't actually have claustrophobia, you're just naturally, you should be scared of tight spaces. It makes you vulnerable. So I'm just saying that. I don't mean to be a stick in the mud. This video is going on 30 minutes, so I'm gonna cut it out here. But I just wanted to say that. So, peace, and continue on with the video. I hope you like it. Thanks. So, many people claim to have claustrophobia when looking at tight spaces or images, like that one. And all of these people, most of these people, don't actually have claustrophobia. This, my friends, is an actual, just natural reaction. You see, tight spaces restrict our movement, thus leaving us vulnerable to harm. Just like any normal animal on Earth, humans have a great and instant disdain for anything that puts them in a vulnerable position. This is why just about 8 out of 10 people, I would say, would that be reasonable? I would say 10 out of 10 people, depending on what picture you're looking at, which is kind of the point, I guess. Yeah, I guess. But anyways, 8 out of 10 people claim to have claustrophobia, when really it's just an instinctual bias. Real claustrophobia is very different, and depending on how bad or how deep the anxiety is, it can even be dangerous. The anxiety disorder can range from being just nervous about seeing tight spaces or just visualizing tight spaces, to actual full-on debilitating panic attacks. The sun's coming out. You can kind of tell. The light. Shine your living light on me. Anyway. I thought you were gonna do, here comes the sun. Da, 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 da. Here comes the sun. We're gonna get copyrighted. Da, 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 da. Mind you, people, when I'm talking about people visualizing tight spaces, I'm not talking about nutty putty scenarios. These spaces can be just theaters, bathroom stalls, revolving doors, car washes, or just even airplanes, just being in an airplane. To a person who has actual claustrophobia, just the sound of the doors locking in a vehicle can invoke a direct sense of anxiety. How horrible is that? That is pretty terrible. Well, yeah, because like I especially so many vehicles nowadays that are like modern vehicles, the doors lock on automatically when you get to a certain speed. So it just it's like poor fellows, poor little fellas. I say all this because, unlike the other previous disorders that I kind of covered, aphasia and pica, claustrophobia is often overrun by normal people. Because so many people claim to have the disorder, people who actually have real claustrophobia often get overlooked, told that it's not that serious, that everybody has it, so on and so forth. As much as you would think, oh, everybody having claustrophobia would make a person feel better, this actually can isolate people who have the disorder and, make them feel very alone, and this is obviously very bad. Claustrophobia shares this with people who claim to have like OCD, ADHD, or even acrophobia, which is the fear of heights. Yeah, like people claim to have like OCD all the time or ADHD all the time. It's like so, what seems to be the problem today? I think I have claustrophobia. Oh, interesting. Okay. So how'd you figure that out? I don't know. Just a feeling. Um, okay. Do you have a diagnosis for it? Uh, what's that? What's a diagnosis? A diagnosis. It tells you what it is. Oh, um, I don't think I need one of those. How do you know you have it if you don't know what it is? Well, there's an app for that, and it tells you everything you have, and it tells you what you have, and how to treat it. You gotta be kidding me! Anyways, simply stated, just because you don't like tight spaces, or you like things in a certain order, or you can't focus, or you get nervous around high places, it does not mean that you have a phobia or a disorder. Congratulations, you're one of the 10% of people out there who have all those things. Right? It's like, I have a fear of heights. Okay. Who doesn't? Yeah, exactly. Who wants to fall? At the very least, don't claim that you have claustrophobia unless you have an actual disorder, or a actual diagnosis to back it up. Simple as that. To further prove my point about what claustrophobia people who have claustrophobia actually suffer through, we're going to go through some of the actual things that affect people who have claustrophobia. For someone with claustrophobia, tight spaces, i.e., a simple bathroom stall, can trigger anxiety symptoms. I'm going to read straight from my script again. These symptoms can be shortness of breath, fast heartbeat, sweating, nausea, dizziness, dry mouth, hot flashes, hyperventilation, hyperventilation? Hyperventilating? Yeah, hyperventilation. Okay. I don't know why that. I was just like, ventilation, Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't know why my brain went there, but really what I was recording that whole time. Anyway, hyperventilation, chest pain or tightness, headache, choking sensation, paranoia, or the sudden urge to go to the bathroom. So you might have claustrophobia so bad that you see a tight space and you're like, gotta pee, gotta pee. Like many anxiety or panic disorders, a waving sense of doom often accompanies these symptoms. You may feel like the world is going to come to an end, or maybe you're going to come to an end. The feelings of thinking that you're going to die, or that someone is going to come get you, or you're just going to suddenly lose air in your chest, or it's just going to be sucked out of you, is often common with these kinds of situations. The more these feelings grow, the harder they are to control. If these feelings are not settled or the individual is not calmed down, these can break out to full-on panic attacks, which is horribly scary, as panic attacks often mimic the feeling of having a heart attack, and that can actually last up to 5 to 30 minutes. Talk about scary as well as painful. The hold that our mind has over our physical bodies is actually pretty insane. It really is. The fact that a panic attack, because the thing about panic attacks is that they're not fatal. No, there's nothing in there that is simply a mind thing. It's your mind tricking your body into believing that it's dying. Right. It's just crazy that something can make you so anxious that your body is just like, I'm having a heart attack. Right. It can be so scary to you that you think that you're actually dying. It's crazy. So that's horrific. How do you get it though? And how do you treat it? As far as we know, there are 3 things that cause claustrophobia in individuals. The amygdala is a region of the brain that controls a lot of complex emotions, including fear. In people with specific phobias, claustrophobia included, these regions of the brain are shown to be overactive. This is simply a developmental mishap, basically. You are born with a brain that has a defect in it, so to speak, and that section of the brain sees these images or something about that and is just like, that is crazy, and that, for some reason, that specific fear response in your brain is just triggered. Another cause is your parents. Literally. A defect in the gene called GPM6A is a suspected cause in certain phobias. This defunct gene was present in both the children who had the disorder and the adults that had the disorder, making claustrophobia and some certain phobias like it hereditary. And the last cause, of course, is my favorite, psychological. Some people who have claustrophobia have gotten it from traumatic experiences with tight spaces. These experiences may be being locked in a closet or the basement by an abusive parent, perhaps the age-old being shoved into a locker by a bully, or maybe even you were a kid and you were wandering around, found a hole, wanted to go in it, because that's what kids do, and then you realized you were stuck, and you were stuck for several hours maybe, before your parents finally came and recovered you. And this might not be a big thing when you're a kid. You might just be like, oh, that was scary, and cry over it. But once you're older, those feeling of being trapped, that feeling of being afraid and helpless, stuck in a space that makes you feel vulnerable, can come back in forms of, semi-PTSD almost, where you will go back to that specific memory when you were, I don't know, being shoved back and forth between the shoulders of 2 people, and your brain just like triggers and remembers that moment when you were stuck as a kid and no one could help you, and it just PTSD. Now, when it comes to treatment, just like the majority of disorders and everything, therapy is key. Unfortunately, avoiding tight spaces and places that give you this sense of claustrophobia and anxiety, avoiding these spaces does not help, and in the long run is actually more damaging, as, you know what they say, you don't run away from your fears. Right, you literally can't run away from your fears in this case, because the more you run away from it, the bigger it'll grow, to where some people can't even come out of their homes without feeling a sense of claustrophobia, which is kind of bizarre, but that's just how the brain works. Right, it's a part where the more you focus on it, like by avoiding it, you're giving it a presence, you're giving it almost a anthropomorphic feel to it, that it is a real thing, and this just forces you to it forces it to manifest more and more in your life till, again, like you said, you literally can't come out of your home without feeling a sense of claustrophobia. Once your phobia is narrowed down and is, put a pinprick on it, confirmed by a psychologist, you can begin to try many of the different therapies. Notice how I said confirmed by a psychologist. The common therapies are, number 1, exposure therapy. Exposing yourself to these fears can bring you to a sense of remembering that these are not actual things that can harm you. These are just projections of your mind, and hopefully you can neutralize your fear by continuously looking at them. I know that this actually kind of helped me. So I have I don't have claustrophobia. Again, no diagnosis for it. Right. And I'm somebody who, I even kind of like comfy little spaces. I've always been that kid that was like, took all the books out of the bottom bookcase in the book, our little closet where we put all our books, because I could hide in there and close the doors on myself and I'd be in a nice tight little room. Right. Yeah, that's pretty common in kids, it seems like. I know I was like that too. And for me, I'm good with some spaces, but like I when I first heard of the Nutty Putty Cave accident, I literally couldn't stand up. My legs were shaking so bad. Just listening to it. It was one of my YouTubers that I listened to for scary stories. And just listening to it, not even seeing the images, because the images are atrociously horrifying. Right. They're they're so bad. I'm actually not a very claustrophobic person. Maybe it's because I'm so skinny and anywhere to me doesn't feel tight. That's interesting, yeah, sure. But to me, I'm like, even looking at those pictures, oh, no, thank you. Right. But once I got into caving, I found some people who do it professionally, like the Adventure Twins, or Caveman Hikes is another channel that does it. I started watching their videos, and it actually did make me feel better. Really? That's crazy. That's crazy that you can watch those, because I almost still can't watch those. Well, you gotta actually do it. But I was fascinated by caving when I first heard about it. You know, I'm like, why would a human being, just classic me, I want to ask the why. Why would anyone do these kinds of crazy things? And that was the thing where I was like, why would people do this? Well, I found out that there's actually some really neat things that go along with caving. Finding all the crystals, the untouched crystals, like going deep into the earth and stuff like that. It's actually just really cool. And it transports you to almost an alien type world that is very beautiful at times. Right. It truly is. Like the crystalline structures and everything and sediment that builds up is like, it's like walls of diamonds, man. It's crazy beautiful. Right. And the more I watched these videos, the more I actually just kind of left that feeling of claustrophobia behind when I thought about these caving things. And it actually did help, which is literally exposure therapy. Right, you found something that scared you, which is caving, and then you watched more caving videos where the people didn't die. No, yeah. And you were like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Yeah, this is actually a cool, interesting, sport. It still can be dangerous, but it's not actually as dangerous as you might initially think it to be. Right. There is a set of rules that you do need to abide by in order to not get yourself in a bind. And a lot of rookies make these mistakes, but for professional cavers, they often don't run into these problems, and they often get out just fine, and it's cool. They get to take some neat pictures of crystal structures that are freaking amazing awesome. Right. I'm talking crystalline structures that are literally taller than a human being. That's kind of crazy, and honestly kind of almost worth it. Yeah. So, exposure therapy, that kind of worked for me. And again, don't have the actual phobia, but I'm just saying that as a little nod to exposure therapy, that it does actually work if you're not that bad into it. If you don't like caving, or if you're just like, oh god, caving, it makes me so anxious, then maybe watch a couple caving videos that are really cool, and you might actually, come to appreciate caving instead of thinking of it as something that is so horribly dangerous or fearful. Yeah, well, there's whole channels that talk about, like, incidents that happened caving. Like, Scary Interesting is one. And you watch him all the time. I watch Scary Interesting all the time, yeah. But it's a balance, right? I watch the Scary Interesting videos for the deaths that have happened during caving or spelunking. And then I watch my other guys that do it for fun. And it's like, to every sport, there is a level of danger. Right. And caving is just really no different. Right. There is a level of danger, but it's not any more dangerous than NASCAR racing or football playing. The amount of injuries that people have sustained playing football, even deaths, people have died playing football, right? Look at brain bleeds and broken bones, injured for life. God. Right. Yeah, people go nutso for that, so It's just pick your poison. Exactly. It's a pick your poison kind of situation. Every sport, everything in life is going to cause pain, and it's just up to you to find the better in it instead of being constantly stuck on, I don't know, Jim Jones. Or John Jones, sorry. I was talking about Jim Jones. Drink the Kool-Aid. I wish he got stuck on Daddy Putty Cave. Yeah, exactly, right? Why couldn't Jim Jones have gotten stuck instead of John Jones, man? John Jones seemed like a cool dude. Alright, he was cool. He just made one little mistake, man. Yeah, well, and again, if he had claustrophobia, he wouldn't have crawled in that hole, now would he? Anyways, I got off topic, but I was talking about exposure therapy. Anyways, the next therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, apparently. This is literally just talk therapy. So, talking about certain issues or certain fears to other people, and beginning to, as you talk about it, you're beginning to kind of somewhat drive away the fear. Kind of, by exposing yourself to it and talking about it, you begin to kind of realize, maybe it's not so bad. I can talk about it. So many people who have phobias and stuff, they don't like to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. Well, the more you talk about it, it's almost like an audio version of exposure therapy in a way, where it's like by talking about it and talking about how it scares you, it makes you kind of overcome that fear in a certain way. And then, of course, there's virtual reality therapy, which is exactly what it seems. It's a part where you are in a open room where you're not confined or anything. Whatever your fear is clearly not in the room, and yet you put on the VR headset and you visualize, you have these 3D models of what scares you, and your body is in a safe place, but your mind is somewhere else, so you can kind of try and realign that fear of being like, oh, my mind is scaring me, but my body's fine. Again, a phobia is something that you're scared of even though it doesn't actually pose any threat to you. Yes, and that can be interesting because, again, like you said, it's a mind over matter kind of thing where it's like your body is safe, you realize your body is safe, but you're visualizing, you're seeing these things that scare you to try and overcome it. Right. Kind of basically rewiring your brain to realize it's okay. There is relaxation and visualization therapy, which is somewhat like meditation, where you just kind of sit there and you just kind of be like, thinking about spaces, thinking about, you think about, it's somewhat like the virtual reality thing, where you think about these spaces that make you uncomfortable, but then you practice your breathing. You practice, oh, I'm calm here, I'm okay here, which is, this is all therapy stuff, so it's just kind of, it's really just mind over matter. You have to learn to calm yourself down, you learn to breathe, you learn to, while visualizing these spaces, while seeing these things. Again, as far as I'm concerned, if I was a therapist, I would just be subjecting my patients to all these videos that I've been watching. Because, again, the twin adventure twins or the caveman hikes, they're a bunch of funny, cool guys. Right. So you kind of get offset with these cool guys that are going into this cave, they're talking and joking with one another. It's a fun atmosphere. It's not this creepy atmosphere like you see in scary videos talking about caving, where it's like scary music and you get the claustrophobia pictures. No, it's just a bunch of guys going into a cave and they're having a fun time and they have smiles on their faces and everything, which is kind of ensuring you that it's okay while also exposing you to these dank, dark spaces that you have phobias about. That's what I would be doing, honestly. And then, of course, there is the age-old medical treatment. If therapies don't work, there is always anxiety medications you can take or antidepressants that may help lessen the fears a little bit in everyday life. Unfortunately, there is no cool or interesting history facts around claustrophobia, which kind of sucks. Oh no, not our favorite part. I know, this history segment is my favorite part, and I tried to find, history of claustrophobia, claustrophobia in history books or stuff like that, and it's there's a bunch of, actual medical text that is documenting it, but there's no, cool, like the aphasia thing where it was like documented in some ancient Egyptian text like not billions, but thousands of years ago. Like that was cool to learn about. Right, that aphasia had actually been documented so long ago. Right, and it's just like, man. But however, everything has a name, claustrophobia has a name, so there is indeed an origin for that name. The name was coined by Benjamin Ball in 1879. It is formed of two words, claustrum and phobos, which claustrum is Latin apparently for enclosed space, and phobos, of course, is Greek for fear. So, very original on that one. Yeah, you hear these cool words like claustrophobia and aphasia and everything, and it's just like, it's just Greek different words for that. Yeah, exactly. It's like, really? You couldn't have, like, I don't know. Okay, well, I can't think of anything. Okay, you got me there, Benjamin. You got me there. You could call it Afra Squish, like afraid of squishing. Or, no breath, like you can't breathe, like no breath syndrome or claustrophobia. It's not a syndrome, it's a disorder, but God damn it. No breath. Okay, we're not any better. I think Benjamin got his beat on the claustrophobia thing now that I think about it. I was giving it, but now I'm like, okay, you know what? I can't come up with it. Me and Kovac can't brainstorm any better word for it, so damn it. So, like many anxiety disorders, claustrophobia is a terrible thing to suffer from. It takes a rational fear, being vulnerable or being stuck in a tight space, and makes it something that is damaging to your life and controlling to your life. Then again, John Jones is an example of maybe why claustrophobia could be a good thing. Or maybe the opposite of claustrophobia, claustrophilia, seems a bit more damaging almost. Yeah, we read something about an article about a guy who had a fetish for it, and, he suffocated to death. I don't know why I had to say it so slow like that, but that was creepy. Yeah, but we'll save that for a different video. I'm interested. Right now we're just doing like phobias and disorders and stuff like that right now, but we will get into some philias eventually. Right, we just gotta be careful. Word choice. Yeah, we do gotta be a little bit careful, but yeah, we will get into philias eventually, and that'll be always a fun thing. But yeah, for those who don't know, the opposite of claustrophobia is claustrophilia, which is the love of tight spaces. Do you think they do, people who have that, they do, no, we're not gonna talk, again, save it for the video. Okay, alright, that's fair. So, that was the video, and hopefully I will see you in the next video when I break a watermelon open with just my nose. Peace!